So, the story so far. Your heroes, that's me, Punk Sanderson, and my boss, the record producer extraordinaire, the Vicar, are at Heathrow Airport on our way to the annual music industry gathering in the south of France. Yes! 5 days in the sunshine, 5 days in the sunshine. We're going with my flatmate Harvey's father, Lord Crappenley, former bandmate of the Vicar, who's half an hour late. I do hope that I do not regret the decision to share a villa with him as much as I regret the size of a recent telephone bill, the Vicar said, rather worryingly. As our flight was called, I gathered up my printouts of the first Vicar Chronicle and the photocopies of the Vicar's business plan. In my haste, I managed to drop one of the additional photocopies of a certain part of my lower anatomy on the floor. Interesting, said Venus, Lord Crappenley's wife, picking it up. Yours? Yes, I mumbled, but it's not that big. I use the enlarger. Hetty, don't be fooled by what they say. Size matters. We took our seats at the back of the plane, right behind Venus and Harvey's dad, the famous Lord Crappenley, the very last person to board, just as they shut the doors. Nothing like Harvey, mousy brown hair fading to white, a light blue cotton suit so crumpled that he could have spent the night on a park bench, a bright yellow cloth waistcoat, checked shirt and maroon tweed tie. He had the most strange way of speaking. At first, I thought that maybe he had a lisp, but it was more like he spoke without moving his lips. Add to this the fact that, well, how shall I put this? He was not exactly abstemious in the alcohol department, an expert in drinkmanship, you might say. Then you'll forgive me if I say that at times I wasn't quite sure if we were speaking the same language. He stood up and introduced himself. Ah, yes, Punk, my son, Harvey's flatmate, and the Vicar's lapdog and poodle. Pleased to meet you. I'm Giles Crappenley, not Crapwell or Crapalot, or any of the other names that a vicious and vindictive press have tried over the years. He threw some things onto his chair. But you, dear heart, must call me Crap. Crap is in the game, that is, not the shitty slimy stuff that occasionally stains the Crappenley undergarments. Mayhap you are unaware of the fact that I'm famous for it. Shooting crap, that is, not having a crap. Although, my previous wife, I tell you this with a smile that is both weary and wry, was very bad at it. Constantly constipated, poor thing. Used to pull the faces of the shaven-ass dog walking backwards variety. Can you believe this guy? I can't, and I'm the one that's making it up. Venus kicked him in the shins. He's teasing you, I'm afraid. A ritual performance. He enjoys shocking people. Lord Crappenley was now making a big show of bowing to the Vicar, calling him Your Vicarious Highness, and offering him his left hand, mimicking the Vicar's left-handed handshake. So kind of you to join us, GC, the Vicar said, not raising to the bait. We have enjoyed meeting Venus. How do you manage it? Was not your last wife called Aurora? Who would have thought that there were so many beautiful women with Latinate names? Surely you have heard of Deedpole, he replied. In this world of enlightenment, where you can choose hair that is blonde and bleached, breasts that are firm and curvaceous, he caressed her thighs, which, from where he was sitting, were roughly level with his head. Why use the old-hatted name that two parents dreamed up some 30 years ago in their, shall we say, youthful exuberance? At that point, we were interrupted by the stewardess who humbly suggested that we should take our seats, belt up, and actually allow the plane to take off. And that is the man they wanted me to share a live television broadcast with, the Vicar whispered, as Lord Crappenley pulled Venus into the seat behind him. It was the first time that the Vicar and I had sat together on a flight since, well, ever actually. He usually turns left to preen himself at the pointy end, leaving me to fend for myself in the cattle truck at the back. And that, you understand, is the way we both like it. On this flight, the Music Biz Special, I suppose, there was just business class throughout, so we found ourselves side by side with one precious foot of no man's land between us, where they'd converted a row of 3 narrow seats into 2 wider business class seats by placing an over-wide armrest in the middle. The Vicar pointed to it as he sat down. They had to put that there, as otherwise our chairs would have been too wide and too comfortable. We have only paid for 2 foot 3 inches of space, and so that is what we shall be given. Better to have wasted space than to let us be more comfortable than we deserve. Such is corporate Britain. I prepared myself for a lecture, but he broke off to busy himself with his blow-up neck cushion and his eye mask and settled back to sleep. "There is no need for you to waste your time daydreaming," he said without moving. "I am paying you to work, not to enjoy yourself. You can always take some notes to use for the next Vicar Chronicle." "Well, nothing interesting could ever happen at a conference about bootlegs," I said, little realising how wrong I could be. "Then might I suggest that instead of scanning the adverts for pictures of scantily dressed young women, you actually read some of the news items in that copy of Music Week you insist on waving around. On the third column, on page 4, you will find an article about a music publisher who recently had his legs broken by the Russian mafia because he attempted to clamp down on bootlegs in Moscow. And the front page of the October 1st issue last year was entirely given over to the murder of a record company executive who attempted something similar. But then you were probably more interested in the poster-size advert for Janet Jackson, which filled the back page, if I remember rightly, which I'm sure I do." Although it's conveniently impossible to check, I thought to myself, sneaking a glance at page 4 of the current issue, which, sure enough, carried a story about bootlegs in Russia. I folded the paper and went to stuff it back into the seat pocket in front of me. "You really should read that article," the vicar cut in, still lying back, apparently asleep, with his eye mask and neck cushion in place. "You have persuaded me to come and talk at this conference, much against my better judgment. You may as well learn what you have got me into." He was disturbed by the arrival of the drinks trolley. "Ah, a glass of champagne, please, Carol," the vicar said, surprising the stewardess by knowing her name. "Together with a separate glass filled with ice. You never serve it sufficiently chilled." The stewardess gave him 2 bottles of champagne and then, looking around to check that no one was looking, gave him a 3rd bottle. "How does he do it?" "Many thanks," the vicar said, bowing his head to her. "Snaffle," he said to me after she'd gone. "They will come in most useful if we have anything to celebrate, such as successfully avoiding most of the other people on this aeroplane for the next 3 or 4 days. He chuckled in that wheezy way of his. All the talk around us continued to be of music, or, more correctly, about the business connected with music. From the man diagonally in front of me, I collected him 500 quid that no one else had bothered to ask for, and he thought, "You know the music business," and asked me to be his manager. It's mad. No one's stealing these artists' money. It just leaks through the floorboards, being pissed away by incompetence, not theft. You two are the only people who have ever audited Performing Rights Society. Or, from behind us, "I persuaded Van Morrison not to play Bush's inauguration because of all the sleaze surrounding his election. It was pretty ironic. They got Ricky Martin to play instead, and he was a declared Gore supporter during the campaign." Or, on the other side of the aisle, "You've got the stage pass, so it doesn't matter if I'm late. Is Tom Jones coming? No, we talked about this before." My kind of people. My world. I'd heard sufficient stories about parties on expensive yachts to make the next few days sound pretty appetising. The vicar had, of course, heard exactly the same stories and decided that he thought the opposite way. "I can think of little that would fill me with more dread than being stuck on a boat surrounded by boorish drunks, spitting expensive wines on my shirt, cigarette ash on my shoes, spraying garlic-flavoured spittle into my ear, and, no doubt, trouser coughing on the canapes." All of which sounded perfectly fine to me. The plane had started its slow descent down towards Nice Airport, a tricky runway, particularly when the Mistral is blowing hard, as we were soon to learn. We were just about to touch down when the pilot pulled the engine full on and pulled back up into the sky. It was the first time that I'd ever experienced an aborted landing. A real intestines sucked up through a straw moment, and this was nothing compared with the shock of hearing the announcement over the aircraft's tannoy. "Attention, everyone! Remain calm. What if this aircraft has been hijacked?"
That boy's not cool. Not so cool. He's got ears the size of a deer face, broken nose and a twisted face, with a voice that...
So I fly in from the US and arrive at Charles de Gaulle in Paris. I go to like gate F and then I'm sent to like gate C and I go on the plane but without my luggage. I don't want to talk hygiene here, but I've lost my luggage and a man has needs.
"I not know," she said. "I read Punk's wonderful story, how you helped Billy G. I want you to help me. I want to meet Punk. He's such a great writer. I want to have his babies."
Cut. I confess, she said nothing of the sort.
Eyebrow.